These are the 50 forgotten Native Americans' blizzard survival hacks that turned certain death into a quiet night's sleep. A family is trapped on the open plains. Suddenly, the sky turns white. A blizzard so brutal it could kill a person in minutes. Their only shelter? A thin tent made from buffalo hide. No modern tech, no thick walls. By all logic, they should have frozen solid before morning. But they didn't just survive the night. They stayed warm. They understood something about the cold that we have completely forgotten. A secret that turns a simple hide lodge into a fortress of warmth. But even with centuries of wisdom, something inside their shelter started to go wrong. A hidden danger that threatened to extinguish their only source of life. How do you survive a killer storm when the real threat isn't what's outside, but what's happening right beside you? Tap subscribe. That way you won't miss new episodes. And tell us where you're watching from and what time it is there. We love seeing where our audience tunes in from. You can almost feel the air yourself. A cold, clean presence on the skin that speaks of a turning world. It is a crispness that belongs to that precise, fleeting moment when autumn has given its last golden breath, and the land is holding itself still, waiting for the long white sleep of winter. This is the great northern grasslands, in a time we might now call the mid-1800s. The sky is an ocean of the deepest, clearest blue, so vast and empty of cloud that it seems to curve down at the edges of the world, meeting a horizon that is nothing but a long, straight line of pale gold earth. The land itself is immense, a rolling sea of dormant grasses, bleached by the sun and frost to the color of old bone. It is a landscape of profound and humbling scale, a place that reminds you of how small you are, and yet how connected to everything. There is a silence here that is not empty. It is filled with the whisper of a constant wind, a wind born 1,000 miles away, carrying with it the scent of distant pines and the sharp, clean promise of ice. It rustles through the dry seed heads of the prairie sage, a sound like a soft, steady shushing, and it pulls at the edges of the heavy buffalo robes worn by the small group of people moving slowly, deliberately, across this expanse. They are a family, a single, self-contained unit, moving with a shared and unspoken purpose. At the lead is an old woman, a grandmother whose eyes hold the memory of 70 winters. Her face is a beautiful map of her life, a landscape of fine lines carved by sun and wind, laughter and sorrow. She does not walk quickly. Her steps are measured, her body moving with the slow, efficient grace of someone who has spent a lifetime conserving energy, knowing its true value. She is not simply walking, she is reading. This entire journey, this slow traverse of the frozen land, is a form of deep and patient attention. Her name, in the language of her people, the Lakota, might translate to something like she who watches the sky, or perhaps woman who listens to the earth. But for our story, we will simply know her as the grandmother, for that is the role she embodies, the keeper of the memories, the holder of the knowledge that keeps the family alive. Behind her walks her son, a man in the prime of his life, broad-shouldered and strong, his eyes constantly scanning the horizon, not with the focused internal gaze of his mother, but with a hunter's watchfulness, alert to any movement, any sign of game or danger. His wife walks beside him, her presence as quiet and steady as his. Tucked into the warmth of her back, nestled in a carrier of soft, tanned hide, is the youngest of the family, a child of 2 winters, sleeping soundly against the rhythm of its mother's steps. A second child, a boy of perhaps 8 winters, walks near his father, his small steps quick and busy as he tries to match the long, easy strides of the adults, his eyes wide with the wonder of the immense world around him. He sees a hawk circling high above, a dark speck against the impossible blue, and he sees the way the frost has etched delicate, feather-like patterns on the fallen leaves of a lone chokecherry bush. He is learning, as all children did, not in a room with walls, but here, in the great, open classroom of the land itself. Their pace is dictated not by a need to arrive somewhere quickly, but by the grandmother's long, contemplative search. She is looking for the place. Not just any place, but the perfect place to make their winter camp, a sanctuary that will see them through the coming moon of the popping trees and the deep, hungry cold that will follow. This is not a task to be rushed. A mistake made now, a poor choice in location, could mean the difference between a winter of warmth and relative plenty and a season of desperate, grinding hardship. So she walks, and she looks, and she listens. She is engaged in a silent conversation with the world itself, a dialogue that has been going on for thousands of years between her people and this land. We, in our modern world, have mostly forgotten the language, but she knows it as intimately as the sound of her own breathing. Her gaze settles for a long time on a distant herd of deer, grazing on a slope where the grass is still thick. She notes their calmness, the unhurried way they move. They are not yet gathered into the tight, defensive bunches that signal the true, deep cold. They are still at ease, which tells her that the harshest weather is not imminent, but it is close. The time of preparation is now. She watches them for a long while, seeing not just animals, but a living calendar, a signpost written in fur and bone. Their coats are thick and heavy, a deep, rich brown, another sign that the winter to come will be a severe one. The land always gives notice, if one only knows how to look. She turns her attention lower, to the winding course of a frozen creek bed, its path marked by a line of leafless willows and brush. She searches its banks for the work of the beaver. To many, a beaver's lodge is just a pile of sticks and mud. To her, it is a detailed forecast. She finds what she is looking for, a large, sturdy dam, recently reinforced with a thick layer of mud and freshly cut saplings. The dam is high, the lodge behind it tall and broad. The beaver people, she knows, are wise engineers of the seasons. They do not build more than they need. A dam this high, a lodge this well fortified, means they are anticipating deep snows and high water when the thaw comes. It is another voice in the conversation, another piece of ancient knowledge confirming what the deer's thick coats have already told her. The winter will be hard. It will be long. The camp must be a good one. It must be strong. It must be safe. Her son understands. He sees her looking at the beaver lodge, and he exchanges a silent, knowing glance with his wife. They do not need to speak of it. The message has been received, absorbed into the collective understanding of the family. There is no fear in this knowledge, no anxiety. There is only a quiet affirmation of the work that lies ahead, a simple acceptance of the season's demands. It is the way of things. The sun is warm in the summer, the snow is deep in the winter. One prepares accordingly. The grandmother continues her walk, her eyes now scanning the trees. Not just any trees, but the ancient cottonwoods, the grandfathers of the riverbanks. Their thick, gray bark is deeply furrowed, like the lines on her own face. They are storytellers, these trees. She looks for the way the oldest among them lean. The prevailing winds of winter, the great, powerful winds that carry the blizzards, always come from the same direction, from the north and the west. Over 100 seasons, these winds have acted as a steady, invisible hand, pushing and shaping the very growth of the trees. The oldest cottonwoods carry the memory of those winds in their bones, in the slight, permanent tilt of their massive trunks away from the northwest. By reading the lean of the trees, she can map the unseen currents of the air. She can find the places where the land itself will offer a shield, a small pocket of relative stillness in a world of wind. She is also looking at the moss, on the northern side of the trunks, where the sun's weak winter rays rarely reach. The moss grows thicker, a deeper, richer shade of green. It is another compass, another small, true sign offered by the living world. The land is a book filled with such signs, and she has been reading it her entire life. It is a slow, methodical process, this search. It is a journey built of countless small observations, of tiny details that, when woven together, create a tapestry of deep understanding. There is no map of ink on paper that could ever contain this much information, this much living, breathing wisdom. The map is the land itself, and the grandmother is its most devoted and experienced reader. We are invited, in the quiet of this moment, to listen in, to learn the first few words of this forgotten language, and to feel the deep, calming reassurance that comes from knowing one's place in the world so completely. The right place is near. The conversation is nearing its end. She can feel it, a subtle shift in the way the land feels beneath her moccasins, a sense of rightness in the air. The long look is almost over, and then the grandmother stops. It is not a sudden halt, but a slow, gentle easing of her pace, as if she were a boat drifting into a calm harbor. She comes to a standstill, and the small family behind her follows suit, the silence of their arrested movement adding to the profound quiet of the plains. For a long moment, she simply stands there, her face turned slightly, her head tilted as if listening to a sound too subtle for any other ear. She draws in a long, slow breath of the cold, dry air, tasting it, weighing it. She is not just breathing, she is communing with the place, asking her silent questions. Her eyes, which had been scanning the far horizon, now draw inward, focusing on the small details of the ground at her feet, the feel of the land through the worn soles of her moccasins, the specific way the light falls in this one particular spot. A slow, almost imperceptible nod is her only signal. The decision has been made. The long search is over. A place is chosen. It is a gentle bend in the frozen creek, a place where the land itself seems to form a cradle. The creek, which in summer would be a rush of clear, cold water over stones, is now a silent, milky white ribbon of ice, its surface smooth and opaque. On the north and west side of this bend, the bank rises into a low, earthen bluff, no more than twice the height of a man, but enough. This low ridge is crowned with a stand of ancient, gray-barked cottonwoods. They are patriarchs of this small valley, their massive trunks scarred with the history of seasons, their highest branches a tangled, delicate lacework against the deep blue of the sky. The spot itself, the piece of ground she has chosen, sits in the embrace of this geography. It is a small, flat circle of earth protected on two sides by the rise of the land and sheltered from above by the silent, watching trees. It feels safe. The feeling is immediate and undeniable, a sense of rightness that settles over the family like a warm blanket. The ceaseless wind that has been their constant companion on the open plains is different here. It does not tear and pull at them. Instead, they can hear it, a high, distant moaning as it passes over the bluff and through the upper branches of the cottonwoods, leaving the air in this small hollow in a state of relative, peaceful stillness. The narrator, speaking in the quiet voice of someone sharing a deep and trusted secret, would now walk you through the simple, elegant logic of this choice, revealing it not as a lucky find, but as the result of a profound and practical science. This place is a solution, a perfectly reasoned answer to the great question of winter survival. First, there is the wind. As the grandmother knew from reading The Lean of the Distant Trees, the harshest winter winds, the blizzard bearers, would come from the northwest. Here, in this spot, that wind would first strike the earthen bluff, its force broken and deflected upwards, over their heads. What little energy remained would then be caught and dissipated by the dense stand of cottonwoods, their 1,000 bare branches acting like a great, porous screen, turning a brutal, tearing force into a scattered and harmless sigh. The family will live in a pool of calm while the storm rages just a few feet away. This is the first and most vital gift of the location: shelter from the wind, the greatest thief of warmth. Next, there is the wood. The ground beneath the cottonwoods is littered with it. Not the living wood of the trees themselves. To take that would be a waste of energy and a show of disrespect. But the winter wood, the dead, fallen branches that have been shed by the trees over many seasons. They lie like scattered bones on the frozen ground, dry and brittle, preserved by the cold. There is a great abundance of it, more than enough to feed their small, precious fire through the longest, coldest nights. It is a gift freely given by the forest, waiting only to be gathered. And finally, there is the water. The frozen creek holds the promise of life. Melting snow for water is possible, but it is a slow process that consumes a great deal of fuel and can result in water that is full of impurities from the air. The ice of the creek, however, is different. Because it froze from water that was flowing, it is cleaner, purer. The sun can already see the place where the current, even in the final moments of freezing, has created a deeper channel where the ice will be thick, clear, and strong. With his bone ice chisel, he will be able to chop through that thick layer to the unfrozen, life-sustaining water that still flows slowly, darkly, beneath it. Wood, water, and shelter from the wind. These are the three pillars of winter life. And here, in this one small, carefully chosen place, all three are present in abundance. With the site chosen, the rhythm of the family's day shifts. The slow, meditative pace of the search gives way to the steady, unhurried movements of making a home. There is no frantic rush, no shouted orders. There is instead a sense of calm purpose, of a family who knows their work and their place within it, each member a part of a well-practiced and unspoken choreography. The son moves to their single horse, a sturdy, shaggy creature that has pulled their travois, a simple A-frame of poles laden with their worldly goods. He speaks softly to the animal, his hand resting on its warm neck for a moment in gratitude, before he begins to unfasten the leather thongs that hold their precious cargo. The heavy, rolled bundles are carefully lowered to the frozen grass. There are two primary bundles that contain the heart of their moving world. The first is the collection of tippy poles, 15 of them, each one long, straight, and impossibly slender. These are not just any wood. They are lodgepole pines, harvested from a distant forest high in the mountains, chosen for their straightness and strength. They have been in the family for years, seasoned by the suns of many summers and the smokes of many winter fires. Their surfaces are smooth to the touch, polished by the hands of those who came before. The son handles them with a practiced reverence, untying the thick hide rope that binds them and laying them out upon the ground like giant pickup sticks, their pointed tips all facing the same direction. While the men handle the poles, the mother turns her attention to the ground itself. She kneels down on the spot the grandmother has indicated, and with a tool fashioned from the shoulder blade of a buffalo, she begins to clear the chosen circle. It is a small patch of earth, perhaps 15 feet across, but she prepares it with the care of a gardener, tending a sacred plot. She scrapes away any loose stones, any sharp frozen tufts of grass or stubborn roots that might press uncomfortably through the floor of the lodge. Her movements are efficient and graceful, her work creating a perfect, clean circle on the frosty earth, the future floor of their home. The younger child, now awake, is set down on a soft rabbit fur blanket, watching the quiet industry of his family with wide, dark eyes. The older boy is given his own small, vital task. He is sent to the edge of the cottonwood stand, not to gather the large pieces of firewood that will come later, but to find the smallest, driest twigs and a handful of the fluffy, fibrous inner bark of a dead cottonwood. This is the tinder, the seed from which their fire, the heart of their home, will be born. He takes his responsibility seriously, his small hands carefully selecting each piece, his brow furrowed in concentration. Now, the mother and son together approach the second, larger bundle. This is the teepee cover, the skin of their home. They unroll it upon the cleared circle, and its immense size becomes apparent. It is a great, pale semicircle of hide, a beautiful and intricate mosaic of more than a dozen large buffalo cow hides, stitched together with thousands of tiny, perfect stitches of sinew. The long, hot work of the summer is held in this single object. The tanning, the scraping, the smoking, and the sewing, all done by the hands of the women. The hide is stiff with the cold, but it still holds the faint, pleasant, smoky smell of the fires that cured it. It lies upon the frozen ground, like a giant discarded cloak, its surface decorated with painted symbols of the family's history and spiritual protectors. As the sun begins to lower towards the horizon, casting long, stark shadows of blue across the white landscape. A profound sense of accomplishment settles over the small group. The air is growing colder now, a deep, penetrating chill that promises a sharp frost tonight. But there is no worry. The initial, and perhaps most critical, challenge of their journey has been met with wisdom and care. They have found their home. Here, in this small, sheltered bend of the creek, they will raise their lodge, build their fire, and live. They have listened to the land, and it has provided. The work is just beginning, but the hardest part, the finding, the choosing, is done. And in the quiet satisfaction of that moment, there is a deep and abiding peace. Then, a change. It is not dramatic, not a sudden thunderclap or a violent gust of wind that rips a branch from a tree. It is a shift so subtle, so deeply woven into the fabric of the world, that only the wisest, most attentive soul would feel it. The family continues their work in the fading light. The son has separated the 15 lodgepoles, his hands moving with the easy familiarity of a task performed 1,000 times. He checks the tip of each one, ensuring there are no splinters, no weaknesses that the strain of wind and hide might exploit. His wife, having cleared the ground, now works with him to lay out the immense buffalo hide cover, positioning it precisely in relation to where the door will face, away from the wind, towards the morning sun, an act that is both deeply practical and quietly spiritual. The 8-year-old boy has gathered a respectable pile of the driest, most flammable materials, arranging them with the pride of a vital contributor. Everything is proceeding with the calm, steady rhythm of a well-rehearsed ceremony. The air is cold and still, but the grandmother has stopped. She was sitting on a fallen log near the edge of the cleared circle, her hands busy with the task of sorting a small bundle of dried sweetgrass, preparing it for the blessing of their new home. But her hands are now still in her lap. She has paused, her head lifted, her body held in a state of absolute, listening stillness. She slowly, deliberately, turns her face to the north, a gesture as ancient as time itself, the way a sunflower turns to the sun, or a deer lifts its head to catch a distant scent. She is not looking at anything in particular. Her eyes are slightly unfocused. She is feeling. The first thing she notices is the absence of smell. For the entire day, the air, though cold, had been alive with the scents of the land. There was the sharp, clean fragrance of the frost on the dry grass, the faint, dusty perfume of the prairie sage crushed underfoot, the rich, loamy smell of the frozen earth along the creek bank, and even the distant, pine-like scent of the wind itself, a whisper of the mountains where it was born. All of that is gone now. The air that touches her face is utterly neutral, sterile, as if it has been scrubbed clean of all personality. It carries no message, no hint of the earth it has crossed. It is a dead air, heavy and inert, and its emptiness is more alarming than any foul odor could ever be. It is the scent of a void, of a great and featureless power moving across the world, erasing everything in its path. She draws a long, slow breath through her nostrils, and the air feels thin, sharp, and strangely dense all at once. It does not invigorate. It warns. The second sign is the silence, not the deep, peaceful quiet that had settled over the valley at sunset, but a new and profound stillness that is altogether different. The constant, soft whisper of the wind in the highest branches of the cottonwoods has not ceased, but every other sound has been extinguished. A moment before, there had been the cheerful, busy chatter of a flock of chickadees foraging in the willow thickets along the frozen creek. They are now gone, vanished as if they had never been. The high, lonely cry of a red-tailed hawk that had been circling in the last of the sunlight has not been heard for some time. Even the tiny, almost imperceptible sounds, the rustle of a mouse in the dry leaves, the skittering of a vole beneath a piece of bark, have ceased. It is as if a great, invisible blanket has been dropped over the world, smothering all sound, all life, all movement. The entire landscape is holding its breath, caught in a moment of terrible, waiting suspense. The grandmother knows this silence. It is the silence of anticipation, the collective hush of all living things as they take shelter before the arrival of a great and indiscriminate force. The birds are not gone. They are hidden deep within the densest thickets, their feathers fluffed, their bodies still, conserving every bit of precious warmth and energy. The mice and voles are deep in their tunnels beneath the frost line. They have felt the subtle drop in barometric pressure, a signal their bodies understand more profoundly than any human mind. Their silence is a testament, a clear and unanimous vote that something immense and dangerous is on its way. And then she sees it, the sky. To the south and west, where the sun has just slipped below the horizon, the heavens are a beautiful, deepening tapestry of bruised purple and delicate, fading orange. But to the north, it is a different story. The hard, perfect cobalt blue that has been the ceiling of their world all day is changing. A milky, luminous haze is rising from the northern horizon, spreading upwards like a stain of spilled milk. It is not a cloud in the way one usually thinks of a cloud, not a distinct shape with defined edges. It is a slow, inexorable bleaching of the sky itself, a diffusion of the light. The sharp, black line of the distant horizon is softening, blurring into a murky indistinctness. The color is draining out of the world from that direction, replaced by a cold, flat, and somehow menacing whiteness. The narrator can now explain that this is the forgotten language of an approaching blizzard. It is a language spoken not in words, but in these quiet, powerful signs. The lifeless air is the leading edge of a colossal dome of Arctic air, a single, unimaginably vast mass of extreme cold that has been pushed down from the polar regions. It is so uniformly cold and dry that it carries no scent of the lands it has scoured. The silence of the animals is their innate response to the rapid drop in air pressure that precedes the storm front. And the milky haze, that ethereal whiteness, is the visible manifestation of that cold, a sky saturated with billions upon billions of microscopic ice crystals, the very building blocks of the blizzard, reflecting the last of the daylight in a pale spectral glow. The grandmother does not need to analyze these signs. She feels their meaning in her bones, in the accumulated wisdom of her 70 winters. Her son, busy lashing 2 of the teepee poles together with a length of wet rawhide, senses the shift in his mother's attention. He pauses his work, the rawhide held tight in his strong hands, and he looks at her. He sees the direction of her gaze, the absolute stillness of her posture. He needs no other signal. He stands up slowly, his eyes following hers to the northern horizon. He is younger, his senses perhaps not as finely tuned as his mother's, but he sees it now. He sees the strange, pale light. He feels the deadness in the air. He becomes aware of the unnatural silence. He turns his head and looks at his wife. She has been watching him, and she saw the moment his focus shifted from his work to the sky. Their eyes meet across the small, cleared circle, and in that single, shared glance, everything is understood. There is no exclamation of alarm, no hurried questions. The knowledge passes between them silently, completely. The plan has changed. The timeline has moved up. The work has become urgent. And yet, there is no panic. Panic is a luxury for the unprepared, a thief of precious energy and clear thought. They are not unprepared. They have chosen their ground well. Their tools are at hand. The knowledge of what to do next resides not in a book, but in their muscles, in their hands, in their shared memory. The change is in the quality of their movements. The calm, unhurried pace shifts, not into a frantic scramble, but into a state of heightened, intentional focus. Every movement now is stripped of anything extraneous. It is precise, efficient, and quick, but still smooth. The rhythm of their work accelerates from a steady andante to a driving allegro, a symphony of survival played in the gathering twilight. The sun now moves with a powerful grace, his actions economical and certain. His wife becomes a whirlwind of quiet, purposeful activity, her hands seeming to be in 3 places at once. The task is no longer just to make a comfortable camp for the night. The task is to raise a fortress of hide and wood against a coming wall of white. The tipi is no longer simply a home. It is a bastion, a tiny island of life and warmth in what will soon be a sea of lethal cold. The fire they are about to build will not be just for cooking and comfort. It will be a sacred flame, a beating heart that must be protected at all costs. The grandmother finally lowers her gaze from the sky. Her face is calm, her expression serene, but her eyes hold a deep and watchful gravity. She walks over to her grandson, who, sensing the change in the adults, has stopped playing with his tinder and is now watching his parents with wide, questioning eyes. She places a hand on his small shoulder, a gesture of reassurance and inclusion. He is a part of this too. As she stands there, her hand resting on the boy, she feels it. A single, tiny, sharp sensation on her weathered cheek, as light as a mosquito's touch. Then another on the back of her hand. It is not the soft, wet kiss of a gentle snowflake. She looks down at the dark wool of her blanket sleeve, and she sees it. A tiny, perfect, six-pointed star of ice, no bigger than a grain of sand. It does not melt. It rests there, a minuscule, glittering jewel of pure cold. Then another lands beside it, and another. A faint, almost inaudible whispering sound begins, the sound of millions of these tiny ice needles striking the stiff, frozen surface of the teepee cover laid out on the ground. It is a sound like sand being poured from a great height, a soft, dry, relentless hissing. The real test has arrived. The first grains of the great white storm have begun to fall. With the arrival of the first hard, granular flakes of snow, the world outside the small family's immediate circle of activity begins to dissolve. The horizon, which had been a soft, blurry line, is now gone completely, erased by a thickening curtain of descending white. The distant cottonwoods across the plains become gray ghosts, then fade into nothingness. The world shrinks, contracting until it consists only of the 15-foot circle of cleared earth, the pile of long, slender poles, the great pale expanse of the buffalo hide cover, and the 4 figures moving within this closing sphere of visibility. The air fills with a steady, dry, whispering sound, the collective voice of a million tiny particles of ice striking the frozen ground. The story now settles into a new rhythm, a calm, instructional cadence that is less about the looming threat and more about the deeply ingrained, practiced response. This is not a desperate, panicked struggle against the storm. It is a ceremony, ancient and precise, the physical enactment of generations of accumulated knowledge. It is the art of raising a home, a sanctuary, in the face of the wind. The sun is the architect and the engine of this creation. He moves to the neatly laid pile of 15 lodge poles, his hands brushing away the fine layer of ice crystals that has already begun to accumulate on their smooth, dark surfaces. These poles are more than just wood. They are the bones of the home, each one known and trusted. He inspects them not with his eyes, for the light is now a flat, shadowless gray, but with his hands. He runs his palms along their length, feeling for any new splinters, any sign of weakness or stress that might have occurred during their journey. His search is for 3 specific poles. They are not marked in any way that an outsider would recognize, but he knows them by their subtle weight, the almost imperceptible thickness at their base, the way they balance perfectly in his hands. These 3 are the foundation poles, the tripod upon which the entire structure will depend for its strength and integrity. They are the heartwood of the lodge. Having selected them, he lays them on the ground, separate from the others. He and his wife then work together, their movements a seamless partnership of unspoken communication. They arrange the 3 poles on the ground. 2 lie parallel to each other, a few inches apart, their tips pointing north, while the 3rd is laid on top of them, its tip pointing south, crossing the other 2 at a particular point. This intersection is not random. It is carefully measured by the sun's experienced eye. It is the point that will become the apex of the lodge, the nexus where all the poles will meet and lock, and its height from the pole tips determines the eventual size and pitch of the tipi. Too high, and the tipi will be too narrow and unstable. Too low, and it will be too squat, unable to draw the smoke properly. This measurement, held in the sun's mind, is the foundational geometry of their survival. Now comes the lashing, the critical act that will bind these three poles into a single, unshakable unit. The sun takes up a long, thick rope of buffalo rawhide. It has been soaking in a small pot of water, and it is now pliable and slick, cold to the touch. This is a key piece of ancestral science. Wet rawhide is flexible and can be tied into an incredibly tight knot. As it dries in the cold, thin air, and later, by the warmth of the fire, it will shrink, pulling the knot so tight that it becomes as hard and unyielding as iron, a bond far stronger than any rope of plant fiber could ever be. He kneels at the intersection of the poles and begins to wrap the rawhide rope around them. His hands move in a blur of practiced efficiency, weaving a special knot that his father taught him, and his grandfather taught his father. It is a knot designed to both bind and allow for movement. He wraps the rope 4 times around all 3 poles, pulling each wrap with all his strength. Then, he weaves the end of the rope between the poles themselves, creating a series of turns that cinch the main wrapping tight. The pattern is complex, a physical prayer for strength. He leaves a long tail on the rope, which he lays carefully down the length of the topmost pole. This long end will be used later, from inside the teepee, to anchor the structure to a stake in the ground, ensuring that even the most powerful updraft cannot lift the poles and collapse the lodge. It is a simple, brilliant piece of engineering, born of a deep understanding of the wind's power. The lashing is complete. The tripod is now a single, articulated unit, lying on the ground like a giant, folded insect. The moment has come to raise it. This is the most physically demanding, and perhaps the most dangerous, part of the process. A mistake here, a slip of the hand or foot, and the heavy poles could come crashing down. The sun positions himself at the base of the 2 parallel poles. He plants his feet firmly on the frozen, snow-dusted earth, his moccasins providing a surprisingly sure grip. His wife moves to the opposite side, grabbing the single, topmost pole. The grandmother and the young boy stand back, watching, their presence a silent, focused encouragement. On an unspoken signal, they begin to lift. The sun uses the immense power of his legs and back, his breath coming out in a great white plume of steam as he heaves the weight upwards. You can almost hear the soft creak of the wood, the taut groan of the rawhide lashing as it takes the strain. The wife does not lift so much as she guides, using her body as a pivot, walking the base of her pole inwards. As the sun lifts his end higher and higher, the entire structure rises slowly, deliberately, into the gray, swirling air. For a precarious moment, it seems to hang in the balance, a dark, skeletal form against the white chaos of the snow. Then, with a final, coordinated shove, it reaches its tipping point. The sun walks his end forward, and the bases of the 3 poles slide apart on the ground, spreading out to form a perfect, stable triangle. The entire structure settles into place with a series of soft, solid thuds and a final, resonant creak of wood, the sound of the foundation finding its footing. The tripod now stands on its own, a stark, 3-legged cone reaching for the sky, the absolute and unshakable core of their home. It is a moment of triumph, quiet but profound. The heart of the lodge is now beating. With the foundation secure, the rest of the work flows with a swift and steady rhythm. The sun begins to lay the remaining 12 poles into the framework. He does not simply lean them against the tripod. He takes each pole, lifts it, and carefully, deftly, rests its tip into the V-shaped notch created by the lashing at the apex. There is a specific order to this, a prescribed pattern that ensures the weight is distributed evenly and that the final structure will have the correct, slightly asymmetrical conical shape. The plains teepee is not a perfect cone. It is tilted, steeper at the back, and more gently sloped at the front where the door will be. This ingenious design makes the lodge more aerodynamic, allowing the fierce westerly winds to flow over it more easily. And it also places the smoke hole, the opening at the top, slightly forward of the center of the floor, creating a better draft for the fire. The sun lays 5 poles to the north side of the tripod, working his way around. Each pole lands in its designated place with a soft, woody thud, a percussive note in the song of construction. Then he moves to the south side, placing 6 more poles, creating the longer, more gentle slope of the front. The skeleton of their home is taking shape, a fan of dark ribs against the ever-whitening sky. Each pole is laid with intention. In the old way, some families had names for each pole, associating them with spiritual protectors, virtues like honesty and generosity, or the different winds. While the sun may not speak these names aloud, the sense of reverence is there. He is not just building a shelter, he is re-establishing the order of his world, creating a sacred space in the midst of a formless storm. The final pole is the lifting pole. The son and his wife go to the massive hide cover, still lying on the ground, now covered in a thin, uniform blanket of white. They fold the top edge of the cover, where the 2 smoke flaps are located, over the lifting pole, and the son securely ties it in place with several short rawhide thongs. This pole, with the entire weight of the heavy, frozen hide attached to it, is by far the most difficult to place. They work together, hoisting it into the air and positioning it in the last remaining gap in the circle of poles, the space that will become the doorway. Once it is resting securely in the lashing, the structure is complete. The cover, however, hangs like a heavy curtain folded over a single pole. Now they must wrap it around the frame. Each taking one side of the heavy hide, they begin to walk in opposite directions around the circle of poles. The stiff, cold-hardened hide unfolds, its great weight a comfort against the rising wind, which now plucks and snaps at its edges. The sound of the hide sliding and scraping over the wooden framework is a rough, satisfying music. As they meet at the front, the lodge is enclosed. They have moved from the outside world to the inside world. The driving snow and the keening wind are suddenly muffled, their power diminished, transformed into a distant, drumming sound on the skin of the lodge. The final step is to close this skin. The 2 edges of the cover that meet above the doorway are held together by a series of wooden pins, small, beautifully carved skewers of ash or chokecherry wood, each about the length of a man's hand. The mother takes these from a pouch at her belt, and starting from the smoke hole and working her way down, she pushes them through pre-made holes in the hide, lacing the 2 sides together, much like buttoning a greatcoat. Every knot tied, every pole set, every pin placed, is a verse in a long poem of survival, a poem written not with words, but with materials, with skill, and with an unshakable faith in the wisdom of the ancestors. The fortress is raised, they are inside, and while the space is dark, and the air is just as cold as it was outside, they are, for the first time, sheltered. Now, inside the dim twilight world of the newly raised lodge, a new and more subtle phase of the work begins. To an outsider, the shelter might seem complete. The walls are up, the doors pinned shut, and the ceaseless howl of the wind has been transformed into a muffled, distant drumming on the taut hide. But for the family, this is merely the skeleton of their home. The lodge, in its current state, is not yet a sanctuary. It is simply a windbreak. It is still vulnerable, leaky, and cold. The true genius of the teepee, the deep wisdom that allowed people to thrive in some of the harshest winter climates on Earth, is not in its basic structure, but in the intricate systems that make it a living, breathing entity, a dynamic machine for managing warmth and air. This chapter of their story becomes a quiet meditation on that genius, a step-by-step journey into the art and science of turning a cone of hide into a microclimate of perfect comfort and safety. A teepee, you see, is not a sealed tent. A sealed tent in this environment would be a death trap, quickly filling with suffocating smoke from a fire and becoming a damp, freezing tomb as the inhabitants' own breath condensed and froze on the inner walls. The Plains Lodge is designed to breathe, to inhale cold, fresh air and exhale smoke and moisture in a continuous, controlled cycle. The first order of business is to seal the connection between the lodge and the land. While the hide cover is heavy, the relentless pressure of the blizzard wind can find even the smallest gap, forcing its way under the hem and creating drafts of life-stealing cold air that would chill the interior and make the fire smoke uncontrollably. The son and the 8-year-old boy begin this task, a process known as chinking. Outside, the snow is already accumulating, drifting into small piles against the base of the teepee. The son, using a shovel carved from the shoulder blade of an elk, begins to scoop up this newly fallen snow. It is the perfect material for the job, dry, granular, and light. He piles it up against the outer base of the teepee, creating a thick, solid bank all the way around the circumference. The boy helps, using his hands, his mittens quickly covered in the white powder, his cheeks flushed with the cold and the importance of his work. This bank of snow does more than just block the wind. Snow itself is one of nature's most effective insulators, its structure being mostly trapped air. By packing it against the hide, they are adding a thick layer of insulation exactly where it is needed most, at the point of contact with the frozen ground. Inside, the mother follows their progress, using her own hands to push the hide cover outwards from the base of the poles, allowing her son to pack the snow tightly into the small space between the hide and the ground, creating an airtight yet flexible seal with the frozen earth. While this essential work is being done, the grandmother turns her attention to the second layer of the teepee's breathing system, the ozan, or inner lining. She unrolls a bundle that contains several large pieces of thinly tanned deer or antelope hide, much lighter and more supple than the thick, heavy buffalo hide of the outer cover. These skins have been painted with beautiful geometric designs, symbols of family history and protective spirits. They are more than just decoration. They are a critical piece of technology. Starting at the back of the lodge, she begins to tie these liners to the inside of the poles, about 5 feet up from the ground, letting them hang down freely to the floor, leaving a gap of several inches between this inner wall and the outer hide cover. Working her way around the lodge, she connects the pieces, creating a continuous curtain of hide that encircles the entire living space, stopping only at the doorway. The narrator might gently explain the quiet physics at play here. This inner lining performs 2 crucial functions. First, it acts as a secondary barrier against any drafts that might find their way through the main cover, creating a pocket of still, insulating air between the 2 layers. This air gap, much like the space between 2 panes of glass in a modern storm window, dramatically increases the shelter's ability to retain warmth. Second, and perhaps more brilliantly, it creates and controls the lodge's circulation system. The cold air that is intentionally allowed to enter the teepee at the base, in a way we will see soon, flows up into this space between the liner and the outer cover. As it rises, it is warmed by the heat radiating from the fire and the people inside. This now warm air continues to travel upwards, eventually spilling over the top of the liner into the living space, creating a gentle, constant, draft-free circulation of fresh, pre-warmed air. Simultaneously, this upward flow of air helps to push the smoke from the fire up and out through the smoke hole at the apex of the lodge. The ozan is the lung of the teepee, a simple yet profoundly effective device for ensuring a warm, fresh, and smoke-free home. Now, we look up, towards the apex of the lodge, to the intricate and crucial science of the smoke flaps. At the very top of the teepee, where the poles meet, the hide cover is not completely sealed. There is a hole, an opening to the sky. But this is not just a simple hole. The cover is split at the top, and on either side of this split is a large, semicircular flap of hide, like a giant pair of ears. From the outer corner of each of these flaps, a long, slender pole extends all the way down to the ground. These are the smoke flap poles, and they are the primary controls for the entire lodge. By moving the base of these poles around the outside of the teepee, the family can adjust the angle and position of the smoke flaps, opening, closing, and aiming them in any direction. The sun now goes outside, into the deepening storm, to perform this vital task. The wind is howling now, a deep, steady roar, and the snow is a blinding horizontal sheet. But he knows exactly what to do. His mother, from inside, calls out to him, her voice muffled by the thick hide, telling him which way the wind is pressing most strongly against the lodge. He listens, and then he plants the base of the windward pole firmly in the ground, pulling its smoke flap to close off the side the wind is coming from. He then moves the other pole to create a wide opening on the downwind side, the leeward side. This is the heart of the system. By closing the windward flap and opening the leeward one, he creates a pocket of low pressure directly over the smoke hole. This low pressure zone acts like a powerful vacuum, actively pulling the smoke from the fire up and out of the lodge, no matter how hard the wind blows. It is the same aerodynamic principle of lift that allows a bird or an airplane to fly, applied to the art of ventilation. The family can adjust these flaps constantly as the wind shifts, maintaining a perfect draw for their fire, keeping the precious warmth in while efficiently expelling the blinding, choking smoke. It is a lesson in microclimate engineering of the highest order, a dynamic, responsive system passed down through countless generations of observation and refinement. With the lodge now properly sealed at the base, lined for warmth and circulation, and vented for the fire, one final piece of interior architecture is put in place. The mother unrolls their sleeping robes, thick, heavy buffalo hides, tanned with the hair on for maximum insulation, and their backrests, comfortable tripods of willow wood with a hide sling for support. She arranges these around the perimeter of the lodge, on top of the ozone liner where it meets the floor. This is not just for comfort. The placement of these bulky items, the family's beds and furniture, around the outer edge of the floor, performs a final, clever function. It holds the bottom of the liner securely to the ground, but it does so in a way that is not airtight. Small gaps are left between the robes, allowing the cold, fresh air from outside to seep under the main tippy cover and begin its journey up the channel created by the ozone. These small, controlled leaks are the tippy's intakes, the source of the fresh air that the entire breathing system depends upon. Thus, the very act of arranging their sleeping space completes the design. The home is now a fully integrated system. It is sealed from the storm, yet it is breathing. It is ready for the final, life-giving element. It is ready for the fire. The work of making the lodge breathe is complete, and the family can now turn its attention to igniting the heart of their home. Now we move to the center of the lodge, to the very heart of this small, self-contained world. The lodge has been raised, sealed, and prepared to breathe, but it is still just a shell, a cold, dark space filled with the same biting air as the storm-ravaged world outside. The transformation from a mere shelter into a true home, a place of life and warmth, requires one final sacred element: fire. The fire in a teepee is not the roaring bonfire one might imagine from stories of pioneers or mountain men. A large hot fire in this confined space would be a disaster. It would consume a voracious amount of precious wood, create an unbearable amount of smoke, and produce a dangerously intense, uneven heat, roasting anyone near it while leaving the edges of the lodge frigid. The fire that is the heart of this home is a small, deliberate, and intensely managed flame, an embodiment of the principle of maximum effect from minimum effort. It is a jewel of a fire, not a blaze, a testament to the wisdom of fuel triage and the art of conserving energy. The place for the fire has already been prepared. It is a shallow, circular depression in the center of the earthen floor, dug by the mother when she first cleared the space. This slight concavity serves to contain the embers and ash and to direct a flow of air to the base of the fuel, ensuring a cleaner, more efficient burn. The position is also crucial. It is located slightly behind the geometric center of the floor, directly underneath the smoke hole which, due to the tippy's intentional tilt, is also slightly forward of the apex. This precise alignment of fire and opening is the core of the lodge's chimney effect, ensuring that the smoke is drawn straight up and out. The 8-year-old boy, with a look of solemn pride, brings his carefully gathered bundle of tinder and places it gently in the center of this fire pit. There is the fibrous, cottony inner bark of a dead cottonwood tree, dry as dust. There are tiny, brittle twigs, no thicker than a blade of grass, harvested from the sheltered underside of fallen branches where no snow could touch them. And there is a small handful of dried sage, not for fuel, but for blessing, its sharp, clean scent an offering of purification for their new home. The grandmother now takes charge. From a small, beautifully decorated parfleche bag, a stiff container of rawhide, she removes the tools for making fire. This is not a casual act. In a world without matches or lighters, the ability to create fire is a sacred skill, a gift passed down from the Creator. She holds in her hands a simple bow made from a bent piece of willow with a loose rawhide string. She has a handhold, a small, smooth piece of soapstone with a depression in the center, and a drill, a straight, dry stick of cottonwood root, its end rounded. This is the bow drill, an ancient and incredibly effective tool for creating heat through friction. The son has already brought in a small, flat piece of dried cottonwood to serve as the fireboard. The grandmother kneels, her movements fluid and unhurried despite the intense cold that now numbs the fingers. She places a small bit of the fluffy cottonwood bark on the fireboard and carves a small notch into the edge of the board, leading into a tiny depression. She places the tip of the drill into this depression, loops the bowstring once around the middle of the drill, and places the soapstone handhold over the top to hold it steady. Then she begins to draw the bow back and forth, a smooth, steady, sawing motion. The drill begins to spin, slowly at first, then faster and faster, its lower tip grinding into the fireboard. A thin wisp of smoke, smelling of hot wood, begins to rise. A fine, dark powder, a mixture of charred wood and friction dust, begins to accumulate in the notch she carved. The son, the wife, and the children watch, their breath held in shared anticipation. The grandmother's movements become a blur, her arm a piston of controlled energy. The smoke thickens, and suddenly, she stops. In the pile of dark powder, a tiny, single point of red light appears, a glowing, incandescent ember, no bigger than the head of a pin. It is a tiny, captured piece of the sundae. With the utmost care, she tips this glowing coal from the fireboard into the waiting nest of fluffy bark the boy had gathered. She lifts the small bundle to her lips, shielding it with her cupped hands, and begins to blow. Not a hard, forceful breath, but a long, slow, gentle stream of air, a breath that is more of a whisper. For a heart-stopping moment, it seems as if the tiny spark will die. But then, the red glow brightens, spreads, and with a soft, satisfying whoosh, the tinder bursts into a small, bright yellow flame. The heart of the home has begun to beat. The flame is alive. Quickly, she places the burning tinder back into the fire pit and begins to feed it, her actions precise and methodical. First, the smallest, driest twigs, laid on one by one, a tiny log cabin of fuel that allows air to circulate. As they catch and crackle, she adds slightly larger sticks, then larger ones still, each piece chosen for its dryness and size. The sun has been busy, using the last of the gray twilight to bring in a supply of firewood. The narrator could now take a moment to explain the art of fuel triage, the deep knowledge of what to burn and when. The first and best fuel is the dead, standing wood, branches on the cottonwood trees that have died but have not yet fallen, held aloft in the dry, windy air. This wood contains almost no moisture and burns hot and clean with very little smoke. Next in value is the wood that has fallen but has been propped up off the ground, resting on other branches. This wood is also relatively dry. The least desirable wood is that which lies directly on the frozen, snowy ground, as it has absorbed moisture and will smolder, hiss, and produce a great deal of smoke before it finally catches fire. The sun, in his quick gathering, has focused on the first two kinds, his practiced eye able to distinguish the driest, most potent fuel even in the dim, snowy light. Inside the lodge, the fire is now stable, a small, cheerful column of flame rising from the central pit. But this wood, precious as it is, will not be the only source of fuel. The wife now brings forward a critical part of their winter stores, several large, hard-dried cakes of buffalo dung, known as buffalo chips. To a modern sensibility, this might seem a strange and unpleasant fuel, but for the people of the treeless plains, it was a gift, a form of portable, slow-burning firewood. The chips were gathered in the late summer and autumn when they were baked hard and dry by the Sunday. They burn with a slow, steady, almost smokeless heat, much like charcoal, and were an essential part of the winter fuel supply, especially when traveling. Their smoke carries a faint, grassy, not unpleasant scent, the smell of home to generations of plains people. These will be used later, mixed in with the wood, to extend the life of the fire through the night. The small, carefully managed fire begins to work its magic. It is a source of light, pushing back the deep, absolute darkness that has fallen outside, casting a warm, flickering, golden-orange glow upon the inner walls of the lodge and the faces of the family. This light is alive, dancing and shifting, making the painted figures on the Ozan liner seem to move and breathe. It is a source of immense psychological comfort, a visible bastion against the formless, chaotic darkness of the storm, and of course, it is a source of warmth. But here too there is a science at play. The family knows not to rely solely on the radiant heat of the flames themselves. The sun now brings in several smooth, rounded stones, each about the size of a loaf of bread, which he has selected from the edge of the creek bed. He places these stones carefully in a ring around the edge of the fire, not in the flames themselves, but close enough to absorb their heat. These stones are thermal batteries. Over the next hour, they will soak up the energy of the fire, becoming intensely hot. Later, when the fire is banked for the night and the flames die down to a bed of glowing embers, these heated stones will continue to radiate a gentle, persistent warmth for hours, keeping the lodge at a comfortable temperature long after the main source of heat has diminished. This brilliant, simple technique of using heat-retaining mass allows them to use far less fuel, stretching their precious supply for the longest possible time. It is a system of profound efficiency, turning a small, frugal flame into a long-lasting engine of warmth, the quiet, beating heart of their temporary home, a triumph of intelligence and foresight over the brute force of the cold. With the lodge secured and the small sacred fire established at its center, the focus of the family's attention now turns from the collective shelter of the group to the individual shelter of the self. The teepee, for all its ingenious design, is not a centrally heated room. It is a brilliant machine for creating a survivable micro-environment, a place where the temperature might be kept many degrees above freezing while a lethal sub-zero blizzard rages just inches away. But ultimate warmth and comfort in this world are not something you sit in, they are something you wear. The family's clothing is not a matter of fashion or status. It is a personal and highly sophisticated survival system, a portable environment engineered with a knowledge of materials and thermal dynamics as deep and practical as that which built the lodge itself. This part of our story explores the quiet genius of wearing the warmth of the land, of clothing oneself in a way that is a direct partnership with the natural world. Each member of the family is dressed in layers, a concept we are familiar with today, but one which they had perfected to a remarkable degree. The genius is not just in the number of layers, but in the specific materials used and the way they interact with each other and with the human body. The innermost layer, worn directly against the skin, is made from the softest, most supple of hides, the tanned skin of a doe or a young antelope, harvested in the summer when their coats are thin and sleek. The leather is treated in a special way, smoked over a fire of damp willow, which makes it incredibly pliable and resistant to moisture. This inner layer is not designed for insulation. Its primary purpose is comfort and moisture management. It feels soft and smooth against the skin, and its natural fibers have the ability to wick perspiration away from the body, moving it to the outer surface of the garment where it can evaporate without chilling the wearer. This is a critical function. In the extreme cold, getting wet, even from one's own sweat, can be a death sentence, as the moisture rapidly freezes and leaches precious heat from the body. Over this soft inner layer comes the true engine of warmth, the garments made from the thick, heavy winter hides of the buffalo. The family wears leggings and shirts or dresses of this material, but with a crucial and counterintuitive feature. The thick, dense, curly hair of the buffalo is turned inward to face the body. A modern person might assume that the fur should face outwards to repel the snow and wind, but the Plains people understood that the primary value of fur is its ability to trap air. Millions of tiny air pockets are caught between the dense fibers of the buffalo's woolly undercoat. This trapped, still air is the real insulator, a barrier that prevents the body's heat from escaping. By turning the hair inward, they place this layer of trapped warm air directly against their inner clothing, creating a personal furnace effect. The body's own heat warms the air held in the fur, which in turn keeps the body warm. The outer surface of these garments is the smooth, tanned leather of the buffalo hide, a material that is naturally windproof and highly water-resistant. Snow does not cling to its smooth, oiled surface, but instead brushes off easily. The final, and most essential, layer is the buffalo robe itself. This is not a tailored garment, but a single, large, expertly tanned hide of a mature bull buffalo, its hair left thick and long. It is both a coat and a blanket, a versatile and indispensable tool for life in the cold. Worn over the shoulders, it drapes down to the ankles, a heavy, enveloping cloak of profound warmth. The hair on the robe is also worn facing inwards, creating an even thicker layer of trapped, insulating air. The sheer weight of the robe is a comfort, a constant, reassuring pressure that feels like a safe embrace. In the evening, sitting by the fire, the family members wrap themselves in these robes, their knees drawn up, creating a personal tent of warmth that traps the heat from the fire and their own bodies. When it is time to sleep, this same robe will be their primary mattress and blanket, insulating them from the cold of the ground and the chill of the air. It is a portable shelter, a piece of clothing that is also a piece of a home. Attention is also given to the extremities, the parts of the body most vulnerable to frostbite, the hands and feet. Their mittens are also made of buffalo hide, often from the thick, durable hide of the bull's neck, with the fur turned inward. They are large and loose-fitting, allowing for a layer of warm air to surround the hands and enabling them to be easily shaken off when fine fingerwork is needed. The family's footwear, their moccasins, are a marvel of practical design. The outer layer is made of thick, tough moose or elk hide, tanned to be both durable and flexible, allowing the wearer to feel the ground beneath their feet, a vital sensory connection in a treacherous, snow-covered landscape. But inside this tough outer shell is where the real genius lies. The moccasins are several sizes larger than the person's foot, creating a space that is filled with insulation. This insulation is not a built-in liner, but a fresh supply of material gathered each day, a thick, soft padding of dry grass or the fluffy, downy fibers from the cattail plant. This natural, plant-based insulation is incredibly effective, and because it is loose, it can be easily replaced if it becomes damp with sweat. For even greater warmth, a second, inner sock of soft rabbit fur, with the hair turned inward, is often worn. The combination of the moisture-wicking grass, the insulating rabbit fur, and the tough, windproof outer hide creates a foot care system that is far superior to many modern insulated boots, keeping the feet warm, dry, and healthy in the most extreme conditions. The final piece of this personal survival system addresses the only part of the body that often remains exposed to the elements: the face. The blizzard wind is not just cold, it is also incredibly dry, and it carries sharp, abrasive ice crystals that can quickly cause painful windburn and frostbite on the cheeks, nose, and lips. The sun, even in winter, reflects off the endless white snow with a blinding, searing glare that can burn the skin and damage the eyes. To protect themselves, the family uses a special balm, a thick paste made from a mixture of rendered buffalo tallow, the hard, purified fat, and fine, powdery wood ash. The mother has a small horn container of this mixture. She takes a small amount on her fingertips and gently applies it to her own face and to the faces of her children and husband. The layer of fat provides a waterproof and windproof barrier, preventing the skin's moisture from being stripped away by the dry wind and protecting it from the direct cold. The ash mixed into the tallow serves two purposes. It makes the balm more opaque, acting as a natural sunblock to cut down on the intense glare, and its fine, gritty texture helps to break up the flow of wind directly at the skin's surface, further reducing its chilling effect. It is a simple, effective, and entirely natural form of protection, another example of using the gifts of the land to live safely within it. And so, the family sits by their small fire, wrapped in the warmth of the buffalo, their faces protected, their feet nestled in soft grass. They are not fighting the cold. They are clothed in a system of such perfect, layered intelligence that they have made the cold irrelevant. They have taken the fur of the great herds, the grasses of the prairie, the tallow from the hunt, and the ash from the fire, and they have woven them into a personal sanctuary. They are wearing the landscape itself as a shield, a warm and living embrace against the storm, with the lodge providing a sanctuary from the storm, the fire providing warmth, and their clothing providing a personal shield against the cold. The family's focus now shifts to the final pillar of survival: sustenance. The blizzard, having settled in for what feels like a long and indefinite stay, has cut them off from the world. Hunting is impossible. Gathering is out of the question. For the duration of the storm, they must rely entirely on the small but potent supply of food they carry with them. This is not a feast. It is a carefully calculated store of energy, a condensed form of last summer's sun and the land's abundance, preserved and packed for just such a time. The preparation and consumption of this food is not a hurried, thoughtless act of refueling. It is a slow, deliberate, and grateful ritual, an honoring of the gifts that make their survival possible. The narrator's voice can become even quieter here, reflecting the almost reverent nature of this moment. The mother moves to a beautifully crafted parfleche case, a stiff, folded container made from a single piece of untanned rawhide, its surface painted with bold, geometric symbols in red and black that tell the story of her family line. This case is their pantry, a portable larder containing the essentials of their diet. From it, she takes out a small leather pouch. Inside is a handful of dried berries, dark, wrinkled, and hard as pebbles. These are choke cherries, picked in the late summer at the peak of their ripeness, and then dried slowly in the sunday. They are intensely tart, but they are also packed with vitamins and a sharp, fruity flavor that brings a memory of summer's warmth to the depths of winter. She places a small handful of these berries into a small pot carved from birch wood and adds a scoop of snow from a pile kept just inside the door flap for this purpose. She places the pot near the fire, not close enough to boil, but just near enough for the warmth to slowly, gently melt the snow and allow the hard, dry berries to plump up, releasing their concentrated flavor into the water. The process is slow, a patient coaxing of life back into the dormant fruit. Next, she removes the cornerstone of their provisions, the food that has sustained the people of the plains for countless generations. Wasna, known in other tongues as pemmican. Wasna is not just a food. It is a technological marvel, a perfectly engineered survival ration that is nutritionally complete, incredibly calorie-dense, and can last for years without spoiling if kept dry. It is the brilliant solution to the age-old problem of preserving the bounty of the hunt for the lean times of winter. The narrator can take a moment to gently explain the genius of its creation. In the late summer and fall, after a successful buffalo hunt, the women would take the leanest meat from the animal, slice it into thin, wide sheets, and hang it on wooden racks to dry in the sun and wind until it was hard and brittle. This jerky was then laid on a hide and pounded with stone hammers until it became a fine, fluffy powder. To this meat powder, they would add an equal amount of rendered, liquid buffalo fat, the high-energy tallow that gave the mixture its incredible caloric density and its preservative quality. Finally, they would mix in crushed dried berries, like the chokecherries or wild June berries, for flavor and added vitamins. This rich, thick paste was then packed tightly into rawhide bags, which were sealed with more melted tallow. The resulting food was a compact, portable storehouse of protein, fat, and carbohydrates, the perfect fuel for the human body in a cold environment. The mother takes out a hard, dark red cake of this wasna, about the size of her 2 fists. She breaks off small pieces and places them on a flat stone that has been warming by the edge of the fire. The heat of the stone does not cook the wasna, but softens it, melting the tallow just enough to make the dense mixture easier to chew and digest. A rich, savory, slightly sweet aroma begins to fill the lodge, a smell that speaks of abundance, of successful hunts, and of the profound security that comes from having enough to eat. It is more than the smell of food. It is the smell of life continuing, of strength being renewed. She offers a piece first to the grandmother, the elder, as a sign of respect, then to her husband, the provider, then to her children, the future, and finally, she takes a piece for herself. They eat slowly, in silence. Chewing the dense, rich food takes time and effort. It is not something to be gulped down. Each mouthful is a universe of flavor and texture. The savory, salty taste of the dried meat, the rich, smooth mouthfeel of the melted fat, and the sudden, sharp burst of tartness from a rehydrated berry. Each bite is a concentration of the energy of the plains, the grass that fed the buffalo, the sun that dried the meat, the rain that grew the berries. In this small, shared meal, the family is quite literally consuming the memory of summer, drawing strength from a season of warmth and light to endure a time of cold and dark. This food is more than fuel. It is a story, a connection to the past and a promise for the future, a gift from the land that must be honored with gratitude and careful stewardship. The meal is small, just enough to satisfy the deep, gnawing hunger that the intense cold creates. The stores must be stretched. No one knows how long the blizzard will last. A day, 2 days, a week. Every morsel is precious, every calorie accounted for. After they have eaten, the son takes on the task of making water. From the pile of clean snow by the door, he fills a larger pot, this one fashioned from the stomach of a buffalo, hung from a small wooden tripod. He cannot place this hide pot directly on the fire, as it would burn. Instead, he uses the heated stones. Taking a forked stick, he carefully lifts one of the glowing hot stones from the edge of the fire pit and lowers it into the pot of snow. There is a loud, satisfying hiss, and a great cloud of steam billows up towards the smoke hole. The snow around the stone melts instantly. He removes the now cool stone, places it back by the fire to reheat, and drops another hot one in. He repeats this process again and again, a patient, cyclical action. It is a slow, fuel-efficient method of melting snow without scorching the hide pot or wasting the direct heat of the fire. Soon, they have a pot of clean, warm water for drinking. A warm drink in the intense cold is a profound comfort, warming the body from the inside out and helping to ward off dehydration, a constant and insidious danger in the dry winter air. As the family settles into the rhythms of the evening, a small, subtle note of concern, a soft turn in the narrative, arrives. The son gets up to add another piece of wood to the fire. He reaches for the pile he brought in just before the lodge was closed, the wood he had so carefully selected, and he notices that it is shrinking more quickly than he had anticipated. The cold outside is not just cold. It is a deep, biting, and predatory cold. A cold that seems to be actively drawing the heat out of the lodge, forcing him to keep the fire burning just a little higher, a little hotter than he normally would. He had planned on this initial wood pile lasting them through the night and into the morning, but as he looks at it now, gauging it with his practiced eye, He realizes that at this rate, it will be gone, or nearly so, long before the first light of dawn. The thought is not a source of panic, but of quiet, serious calculation. Going out into the full fury of the blizzard in the dead of night to search for more wood would be a desperate, dangerous gamble. They have a supply of the buffalo chips, but those are best used for a slow, smoldering heat, not for the more active flame needed to fight back this level of intense cold. A new and unexpected complication has entered their sanctuary. The careful balance they have created between warmth and resources has been threatened. The battle against the cold is not over. It has just entered a new, more subtle and demanding phase. The storm is testing them, not just with its direct force, but with its insidious, energy-sapping persistence. The world outside the thin hide walls has now been completely erased. There is no longer any sense of day or night, only a perpetual, roaring twilight of swirling white. The sun, moon, and stars are gone, hidden behind a ceiling of storm clouds so thick and low it feels as if the sky itself has collapsed upon the earth. The landscape of rolling hills, the frozen creek, the stand of ancient cottonwoods, all have vanished, buried under a deep and ever-deepening blanket of drifting snow. Life is now confined entirely to the 15-foot circle of the teepee, a tiny, fragile bubble of warmth and order in a universe of vast, chaotic cold. As the hours pass, the family settles into the quiet rhythm of life inside the storm, a rhythm dictated not by the sun, but by the needs of the fire and the body. This chapter of their story explores that quiet, internal world, a world of listening, of small, deliberate actions, and of the powerful bonds that hold a family together in the face of the unknown. The primary sound within the lodge is the voice of the storm. It is not a sound that can be ignored, but one that is absorbed into the fabric of their existence. It is a constant, deep, moaning roar, a bass note that vibrates through the very ground beneath them. At times it rises in pitch to a high, tearing shriek as a particularly violent gust of wind claws at the apex of the lodge, making the tide poles creak and groan like the timbers of a ship in a heavy sea. The taut buffalo hide cover hums and thrums with the wind's pressure, and the sound of the fine, hard snow hitting the skin is a relentless, driving hiss, like a river of sand pouring over them. Yet, inside, these terrifying sounds are transformed, muffled and softened by the layers of hide and the insulating bank of snow. The roar of the blizzard becomes a strange kind of lullaby, a constant reminder of the safety and warmth of their sanctuary. The more fiercely the storm rages outside, the more profound the sense of peace and security within becomes. They are not fighting the storm. They are living within its heart, protected by the thin, strong membrane of their ancestral knowledge. In the warm, flickering firelight, life continues in a series of small, calm, and purposeful actions. There is a deep and abiding understanding among them that every unnecessary movement, every wasted gesture, is a squandering of precious energy. So they sit or lie still for long periods, wrapped in their heavy robes, conserving their warmth and strength. But it is not an empty or bored stillness. It is a state of quiet, watchful attention. The grandmother, her back supported by a willow frame backrest, sits near the fire. Her eyes, which seem to hold the soft reflected light of the flames, are closed, but she is not asleep. She is listening. She is listening to the voice of the storm, gauging its temper, its rhythms, its subtle shifts in tone that might signal a change in direction or intensity. She is listening to the crackle and hiss of the fire, her experienced ear able to tell from the sound alone if it is burning too quickly, if the wood is too wet, or if it needs a small adjustment of the fuel to burn more efficiently. Most of all, she is listening to the breathing of her family, the slow, steady rhythm of her son's breath, the quieter inhalations of her daughter-in-law, the soft, quick sighs of her grandchildren. To her, this is the sound of life, the music that confirms that all is well. To pass the time and to reinforce the vital knowledge that keeps them safe, the grandmother begins to tell a story. In her culture, storytelling is not mere entertainment. It is the primary vehicle for the transmission of knowledge, history, and sacred law. The stories are libraries of information, their characters and plots encoding complex lessons about geography, animal behavior, and the rules of social cooperation and survival. The story she chooses to tell is an old one, a tale of Iktomi the spider, a trickster figure who is clever but often gets into trouble because of his impatience and his failure to listen to the advice of the wise. As she speaks, her voice is low and melodic, rising and falling with the cadences of the tale, a soothing counterpoint to the roaring of the wind. The children listen, captivated, their faces glowing in the firelight. But they are not just hearing a story about a spider. They are hearing a lesson about the importance of patience, of listening to one's elders, of not rushing into a situation without careful thought. They are learning that the wise mouse who stays in its burrow during a storm will eat the seeds it has stored and live, while the foolish rabbit who dashes out into the white blindness will become lost and freeze. The characters in the story reinforce the very rules of patience and conservation that the family is practicing at this very moment. The story is a living tool, a way of weaving survival instructions into the very fabric of the children's imagination. While the grandmother speaks, the son and his wife are engaged in their own quiet tasks. The son, the father of the family, is the guardian of the shelter. He does not sit still for long. Every hour or so, he rises and moves slowly around the perimeter of the lodge. He runs his hands over the base of the poles, feeling their seating, ensuring that none have shifted under the relentless pressure of the wind. He checks the rawhide ropes that peg the outer cover to the ground, pulling on them to test their tension, tightening a knot here, adjusting a peg there. The frozen ground is as hard as iron, but he knows that a loose peg can allow the wind to get a purchase under the hide, creating a flap that, in a storm of this magnitude, could quickly lead to the entire cover being torn loose. He pays special attention to the door flap, a separate piece of hide weighted down with a heavy piece of wood, ensuring it is secure. He is a sentinel, his methodical patrol a constant affirmation of the lodge's integrity. The mother, the heart of the home, works on mending. From a small leather pouch, she takes out a child's moccasin that has begun to show wear at the toe. She threads a needle, not of steel, but a sharpened, polished piece of bone, an awl, with a strand of sinew, the dried and shredded tendon from the back of a deer. Sinew is a remarkable material. When dry, it is incredibly strong, and when it gets wet, it swells, tightening the stitches and making the seam waterproof. Her hands, illuminated by the firelight, move in a steady, practiced rhythm that is mesmerizing to watch. The awl pushes through the tough hide. She pushes the sinew through the hole and pulls the stitch tight. Push, thread, pull, push, thread, pull. It is a slow, meditative act, a small, quiet act of care and provision that speaks volumes about the enduring strength of the family. She is not just fixing a shoe. She is ensuring that when the storm is over, her child's feet will be warm and protected. She is stitching her love and foresight into the very fabric of their lives. In the small, warm space, there are other beings as well. Curled up near the children's sleeping robes are the two family dogs. They are not pets in the modern sense, but working partners, valued members of the group. They are of a hardy, wolf-like breed, their thick fur providing them with their own perfect insulation against the cold. They sleep for long stretches, but their sleep is light and watchful. Their keen ears, far more sensitive than any humans, are constantly monitoring the world outside. They can distinguish the normal moan of the wind from the subtle sound of a heavy branch cracking under the weight of snow. They can hear the distant, hungry howl of a wolf pack, a sound completely lost to the human family in the roar of the blizzard. A low growl from one of the dogs, a soft rumble deep in its chest that does not even disturb the sleeping children, is an early warning system, a signal that something has changed, that a new presence is near. They are sentinels of scent and sound, an extra layer of security and awareness that extends the family's senses out into the white darkness. Their quiet, breathing presence is a comfort, a reminder that they are not entirely alone in this storm-tossed world. In this way, the family functions as a single, breathing organism. Each member has their role, their contribution to the whole. The grandmother's wisdom, the son's strength, the mother's care, the children's potential, even the dog's watchful senses, all are woven together in a complex, resilient tapestry of quiet, focused, and cooperative unison, all of them listening together to the long, deep, and patient moan of the storm. In the deepest, coldest heart of the night, a crisis arrives. It does not come as a shout or a sudden, catastrophic failure of the lodge. It does not roar or crash. It comes as a whisper, a subtle, creeping change in the quality of the air that is felt more than heard, a quiet theft of warmth that threatens the delicate balance the family has so carefully constructed. The storm outside has not lessened. If anything, its voice has deepened, its power settled into a relentless, grinding siege. But inside the teepee, something has shifted. The small fire, which has been their sun, their source of light and life, is beginning to falter. The sun's earlier concern has proven true. The wood is nearly gone. The pile that had seemed adequate is now just a handful of sticks, a meager offering against the hours of darkness that still lie ahead. He has been feeding the fire sparingly, piece by piece, trying to stretch the fuel, but the cold pressing in on them is immense, a palpable, physical weight. To fight it, the fire has demanded more and more, and now, the debt is coming due. The flame, once a cheerful, dancing column, has shrunk. It no longer leaps and flickers, but clings low to the embers, a pale and hesitant glow. The warm, golden light that had filled the space has receded, pulling back towards the fire pit, leaving the edges of the lodge in a deep, encroaching shadow. And with the diminishing of the light comes the diminishing of the warmth. The air inside the tipi, which had been cool but comfortable, is now taking on a sharp, biting edge, a cold that seeps, that seems to emanate from the very ground itself, crawling under their robes and chilling them to the bone. The grandmother is the first to truly show its effects. Huddled in her buffalo robe, her face is impassive, her spirit strong, but her son, watching her in the dying firelight, sees a tremor. It is a small, almost imperceptible shiver that runs through her frail body, a faint, involuntary quivering of her shoulders. It is a sign that cannot be ignored. For an elder, whose body cannot generate heat as efficiently as a younger person's, a chill like this is more than just uncomfortable. It is a profound danger. It is the first step on a slippery slope that can lead to a catastrophic loss of core body temperature, a quiet, sleepy descent from which there is no return. Her shiver is a silent alarm, a signal that the integrity of their sanctuary has been breached. The real threat is not the raging blizzard outside, but the insidious, growing cold right here, beside them. This is the moment where the deepest wisdom of the family is revealed. The resolution does not come from a great dramatic act of heroism. There will be no desperate, suicidal dash into the storm for more wood. Such an act would be foolish, a gamble against impossible odds. And these are not people who gamble. They are people who know. The solution comes not from force, but from intelligence, not from a single grand gesture, but from a series of small, precise, and deeply knowledgeable adjustments. It is a quiet symphony of conservation and community, a masterclass in the profound power of small, careful acts. The grandmother, feeling the son's worried gaze upon her, speaks for the first time in over an hour. Her voice is a little thin, a little reedy, but it is calm and clear. "Move the heart," she says, simply. Her son understands immediately. The heart is the fire. He takes a digging stick, its end hardened in flame, and carefully, gently, he begins to push the entire bed of glowing embers and the few remaining pieces of burning wood to a new spot within the fire pit. A patch of fresh earth just a few inches from where it had been. To an observer, this might seem a pointless, trivial act, but it is a move of quiet brilliance. The ground directly beneath the fire, after hours of burning, becomes saturated with heat, a deep reservoir of warmth. However, it also becomes caked with a layer of insulating ash, which can block the upward radiation of that heat. By moving the fire to a new spot of cold, fresh earth, two things are accomplished at once. First, the intense heat of the embers is now able to radiate directly into the cold ground, drawing out any lingering dampness and creating a new, efficient heat sink. Second, the old spot, now just a bed of hot earth covered in ash, continues to radiate a gentle, diffuse warmth upwards for a very long time, effectively creating a second, passive heat source within the lodge. With one small, simple action, they have nearly doubled the amount of radiant heat being released into their living space without using any additional fuel. Next, the sun turns to the last of their fuel. He has the few remaining sticks of precious cottonwood, and he has the hard, dry cakes of buffalo dung. Now is the time to use them together. He places one of the buffalo chips directly onto the glowing embers. It does not burst into flame, but begins to smolder, glowing a deep, cherry red, releasing a steady, intense, and almost smokeless heat. He then leans the last few sticks of wood against it, not piling them on, but arranging them carefully so they receive the maximum heat from the smoldering chip, while still allowing air to circulate. The dung acts as a long-burning coal, a fire extender. Its slow, steady heat efficiently igniting the wood and ensuring that every last calorie of energy contained within it is released as warmth into the lodge, not wasted as smoke up the flue. He is actively managing the combustion, turning the fire from a simple blaze into a highly efficient furnace. While the son tends to the fire, the mother and the grandmother attend to the distribution of warmth among the family. The largest and warmest buffalo robes, those with the thickest fur, are brought to the grandmother. They are not simply draped over her, but redistributed with care. The mother takes one robe and wraps it tightly around the grandmother's lower body and feet, tucking it in to trap the air. She takes another and drapes it over her shoulders, then brings the edges forward and tucks them under her, creating a sealed personal cocoon of fur. The young children, who are still sleeping soundly, are moved from their own robes and gently placed beside their great-grandmother, one on each side, nestled into the deep, warm fur. Their small young bodies are like little furnaces, and their body heat will now be shared, adding to the collective warmth of the elder's cocoon. It is an act of profound, unspoken community. The strength of the young is used to protect the vulnerability of the old, and in turn, they are sheltered within her embrace. It is a living diagram of the family structure, the generations, interwoven, supporting and sustaining one another. Then comes the final act in this quiet battle for warmth. The son takes his forked stick and carefully lifts one of the smooth, dark river stones from the edge of the fire. It has been sitting there for hours, soaking up heat, and it now glows with a faint, deep red light of its own. It is a battery of stored heat, a captured piece of the fire's energy. Handling it with immense care, he wraps the intensely hot stone in a piece of spare rawhide, a thick, protective layer to prevent it from burning anything it touches. He then crawls over to the grandmother's sleeping bundle and gently, carefully, tucks the wrapped stone into the foot of her cocoon of robes, near her feet. He does the same with another stone, placing it near the children. These stones will now slowly, steadily release their stored thermal energy for hours, a gentle, persistent, radiating warmth that will spread through the robes, driving out the deep chill and raising the temperature of the air trapped inside their personal shelters. The effect is immediate and profound. The shivering in the grandmother's shoulders begins to subside, replaced by a deep, restful stillness. As a final measure, the mother takes the small horn container of rendered fat, the last of their wasna supplies. It is not food for a meal, but a final, high-energy dose of internal fuel. She scoops out a small spoonful of the sweet, energy-rich tallow and gives a little to everyone, starting with the grandmother. The concentrated calories will be quickly metabolized by their bodies, raising their own internal fires, giving them the strength to generate their own heat from within. It is a small act, But it is another crucial piece of the puzzle, another layer of intelligence in their defense against the cold. The crisis, which had arrived as a whisper, has been met and turned back, not with a shout, but with the quiet, overwhelming power of collective wisdom. They have moved the fire, optimized the fuel, redistributed the robes, shared their body heat, deployed their heat batteries, and stoked their internal furnaces. They have not found more fuel. They have simply become radically, beautifully, and intelligently more efficient with the warmth they already had. And in the soft, glowing light of the renewed fire, a deep and earned peace settles over the small, warm lodge once more. And then, after an immeasurable passage of time, a new kind of silence begins to descend. It is not the tense, waiting silence that preceded the storm, but a quiet of a different quality altogether. The relentless, deafening roar of the wind, the sound that had become the very fabric of their world, does not stop abruptly. Instead, it begins to slowly, gradually, unwind. The high, shrieking gusts that had torn at the lodge's peak, making the poles groan, cease their assault. The deep, steady, moaning bass note that had vibrated through the ground begins to fade, its power receding, its voice growing distant and weary. The constant, abrasive hiss of blowing snow against the hide walls softens, becoming a gentle, sporadic brushing, and then nothing at all. The world outside the teepee falls into a deep, muffled, and profoundly peaceful stillness, the kind of absolute insulating silence that only a heavy, settled blanket of fresh snow can create. The great storm has passed. Its energy is spent. It has moved on, continuing its journey east across the vast, open plains, leaving in its wake a world transformed, a world at rest. Inside the lodge, the change is felt as much as it is heard. The constant pressure on the hide walls relaxes, and the entire structure seems to settle with a soft, collective sigh of relief. The air itself feels different, no longer charged with the violent energy of the storm, but calm and heavy and still. Through the smoke hole at the top of the lodge, the oppressive, featureless gray that has been their only sky for so long begins to change. A new light, a soft, ethereal, and impossibly gentle glow, starts to filter down into the dim interior. It is not the direct, golden light of a clear sunrise, but a diffuse, pearlescent luminescence, the first light of a long-awaited morning, filtered and softened by a thin, high layer of clouds, the storm's trailing edge. It is the light of a new day, a day of survival, a day of peace. The sun, who has kept a quiet, lonely vigil through the final hours of the night, watching the fire, listening to the breathing of his family and the voice of the storm, rises slowly from his place. Every muscle in his body aches with the deep weariness of sustained tension and vigilance. He moves to the front of the lodge, to the pinned flap that serves as their door. His hands move to the smooth, fire-hardened wooden pins that have held their sanctuary sealed against the white wall of the blizzard. With slow, deliberate movements, he begins to pull them out, one by one, from top to bottom. As the last pin is removed, he pushes the heavy, stiff hide door flap to one side and takes a step back, allowing the family their first glimpse of the world that has been remade. The light that floods into the opening is not harsh or blinding, but soft and pure, a clean, blue-white radiance that seems to wash the warm, smoky air of the teepee's interior. The family, waking now from their deep, warm sleep, sits up in their robes, their faces filled with a quiet, solemn awe. They look out upon a world that is utterly, breathtakingly beautiful, a landscape scrubbed clean and reborn in white. Every surface is covered in a deep, impossibly thick blanket of soft, untouched snow. The ground is a smooth, seamless expanse of sculpted drifts, its gentle curves and hollows shaped by the wind into a vast, silent, sleeping sculpture. The low bluff that had sheltered them is a soft, rounded shoulder of white. The frozen creek is gone, its path only hinted at by a slight depression in the unbroken snowscape. The ancient cottonwoods that stand as sentinels over their small camp are transformed. Every trunk, every branch, every tiny delicate twig is heavily laden with a thick coating of pristine snow, turning the familiar skeletal forms of the trees into a fantastical forest of pure white coral. Against the sharp, clean, pale blue of the morning sky, their beauty is so profound, so perfect, that it feels sacred, a gift to the eyes after the long blindness of the storm. There is no mark of human or animal passage anywhere. The world is a clean slate, a page unwritten, and yet, even as they watch, life begins to return. The sun points a silent finger, and there, just a few yards from the tipi, is a line of fresh tracks, a delicate dotted trail of tiny footprints in the deep powder. A snowshoe hare, emerged from its burrow beneath a snow-covered thicket, has already been out to greet the new day. The tracks show it moving with a calm, unhurried, hopping gait, not the frantic, bounding leaps of a creature in fear. The world is safe again. High above, a sound breaks the profound silence, the cheerful, busy chick-a-dee-dee-dee of a chickadee, the first bird to risk its voice in the still, cold air. Another answers, and then another, and soon the air is filled with their brave, resilient calls, a testament to the enduring, irrepressible power of even the smallest of lives to weather the greatest of storms. The sight of the tracks, the sound of the birds, these are the final confirmations. The test is over. They have passed. They have endured. Life has returned. This final chapter is a coda, a quiet, contemplative moment of profound gratitude and earned rest. There is no triumphant celebration, no loud rejoicing. That is not their way. Instead, there is a deep, quiet, and shared feeling of thankfulness that is as vast and as silent as the snow-covered land itself. They are grateful for the lodge, the thin, hide shelter whose brilliant design held them safe, a tiny, resilient womb in the heart of the raging storm. They are grateful for the fire, the small, carefully tended heart of their home, whose warmth beat back the lethal cold and whose light held the terrifying darkness at bay. They are grateful for the buffalo, the great, shaggy beings whose hides formed their shelter and their robes, whose meat and fat sustained them, whose very bones and sinew provided them with tools. Their entire existence in this moment is owed to the generosity of that one animal, and most of all, they are grateful for the knowledge, the ancient, invisible inheritance passed down from the ancestors, the stories, the skills, the quiet wisdom that taught them how to read the signs of the sky, how to raise the lodge, how to manage the fire, how to live not in opposition to the storm, but in intelligent, respectful harmony within it. It is this knowledge that has been their true shield, their ultimate provision. The sun takes a deep breath of the cold, clean, sanctified air, and the breath he releases is not a shiver, but a long, slow sigh of release, the letting go of a burden of vigilance he has carried for many long hours. He turns and looks at his family, at the faces of his wife, his children, his mother, all illuminated in the soft, beautiful light of the new day, all safe, all warm, all alive. A look of deep, quiet love and profound relief passes between them, an acknowledgement of the bond that has seen them through. The work is done. The storm has passed. It is time, now, for rest. The deepest, most earned rest, the kind of rest that comes only after a long and difficult journey, has been brought to a safe and successful end. And as the first light of the long morning touches the snow, there is only stillness. Inside the lodge, the family rests. The great storm is over. The work is done. They have met the challenge not with force, but with knowledge, with patience, with grace. They are warm. They are safe. Their breath rises and falls in the peaceful rhythm of sleep, the kind of deep, earned rest that comes after a long journey. And now, it is your time to rest too. There is no more work to be done. Let the image of that quiet, warm lodge be your own. Feel the weight of the heavy robes settling over you, the comforting dark, the feeling of being completely safe from the world outside. The fire is banked, its embers glowing softly. The wind has fallen silent. All that is left is the stillness and the slow, steady rhythm of your own breath. Let it guide you down into a deep and peaceful sleep. Rest now. Just rest.